You have to continue to choose your worth in life. And all that means is choosing to love yourself fully along the ever-changing terrain of life. Our worth gets tested by relationship, by a job, by our own hopes, desires, and aspirations, by an encounter, by authority, by the story of your childhood, by simply being human. It's part of the growth arc of life, the forgetting in order to remember again, the self-discovery, the acts of bravery, the courage to be you, the will to live by your heart, the love of the journey, both joyful and grueling. It's a constant choice, one that settles in like second nature, like a best friend you could never betray, like a lover you'd swear your heart to endlessly. Your worth becomes your companion, your greatest and wisest teacher, your soulmate, the one you'd love and die for. Because within your worth is home, is you, is source, is love. And that is something to nurture and keep close to your heart till the end of your human days. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. So I wanted to begin with that. Firstly, hello, beautiful people. How are you doing? I wanted to begin with that. I wrote that the other day, tuning into the energies as always, but also reflecting upon my own journey. And I think these times are, as I've been speaking about for months and months and months, it's a homecoming, it's a remembering, it's a coming back to ourselves. And self-worth is such a big piece of that because we've been living under the shadow of not good enough, scarcity. We have not been, we haven't been treated well, by the world, by society, by the rules of society, by those that proclaim to lead us, but really control us. So it's a beautiful time of reclamation, of reclaiming truth, but really reclaiming who you truly are and reclaiming home. I don't know why I keep on thinking about this term of heaven on earth, or the kingdom. What is it? The kingdom of heaven is within you. I'm not a religious person. I don't read the Bible. I don't read scripture, but there's something about that keeps on dropping in of we have access to everything within us, the entire inner verse and our inner standing of things, not understanding, but inner standing of things. And so it's like the light is being turned on. But what I want to speak to today is how a spiritual awakening can be very shocking for people. Truth can be very confronting. And awareness itself can be uncomfortable. It can be really uncomfortable because you can't unsee what you see. And I read this beautiful post that I'm going to read to you a little bit later that inspired the topic, but it's also something that I've been speaking to and working with people for a long time around, that the moment that you have that observer, that witness that comes in, because most of the time we're in the programming, we're in the unconscious, subconscious programming of our personality. And we're not aware of what's going on. We don't have any sense of control of what's going on because we just feel like we are it. And I was thinking about how this morning, I was thinking about this, that if you don't have the tools of self-awareness and you don't have the experience of being the observer, the witness that can just hover a little bit, I feel it, above and behind, that can witness and observe your human experience, but recognize you are not your human experience. That's not who you are. You're not your flesh and bone. That is the vehicle. It's like saying the car is you, right? The car is the vehicle. You are the driver that's in the driver's seat, and that is the soul. The soul is at the helm of all things. But without that observer, without that witness, it's like you can't see the forest for the trees because everything is right up, not even just in front of you. You think you are it. You think you are your programming. And it makes me think of, like, the Bruce Liptons and the I don't know why his name is evading me today. It's completely escaped me. It'll come. There's many people that speak to this about the programming of our subconscious mind. And I think the practice of being with, I prefer that, using that instead of meditation, but it's the practice of self-awareness, of just being with ourselves and with our experience and with our thoughts and with our feelings. And that observation, that witnessing, and that being with gives us enough space to recognize, I am not that. I am experiencing that, but I am not that. Right? Your feelings, emotions, your moods are changing like the passing clouds, move through the sky. It's not who you are. And I think also, you've heard me talk about a lot how we aren't what we do. And that's a tricky one for people because they think, well, but if you do this and this and that makes you either a good person or a bad person, you are that. It's not to say that it doesn't have an influence and doesn't have an effect. Of course it does. But you are not fundamentally that. And if I strip it down to the bare basics, it's like if you, I don't know why this image comes into my mind. If you, as a kid, dropped your glass of milk and all the milk went onto the floor and the glass broke and shattered, and you get reprimanded for that and you get told, bad girl, bad boy, you think, I am a bad person because I dropped the glass of milk by accident, right? But I dropped it and I broke the glass, and therefore I am a bad person. Where that wasn't the case. That little girl or boy wasn't a bad girl or boy. They had an accident. They dropped the glass of milk, Shit happens. Accidents happen. But when we make this connotation and we measure ourselves by what we do as either being good or bad, succeeding or failing, then yeah, you're going to believe that you are what you do. It doesn't give you the permission slip to go out and be an asshole and be like, well, I'm not what I do. You also have to show up as who you truly are. And if you're showing up like a dick, like, yeah, you need to take self-responsibility for that. We all need to take self-responsibility for our behavior. But again, our behavior, our actions can change according to our self-awareness, and most especially our awareness if it comes with kindness for ourselves and for others. So we're unpacking all of these ways of being, these embodiments, these beliefs of who we think we are, or who we don't believe ourselves to be. Like, we see ourselves through the lens of scarcity, of not good enough, of not worthy enough, of not deserving of anything good in our lives. And we're not seeing ourselves as worthy and lovable and significant and belonging just by our sheer existence, and that we are miraculous and incredibly powerful in the most pure and beautiful of ways, right? We're not seeing, dare I say, the potential of who we are, but really it's just who we truly are, right? So there's so much in it. And that in and of itself can feel overwhelming because it's like, well, shit, who am I? Because who most of us have been taught to be in society, through education, through parenting, through subliminal influencing of our peers and our society at large, it's that's not your true you, right? And self-worth is, it can be something that's confronting because the brain functions in such a way that it's more comfortable with what it knows, even if what it knows isn't good for you, than it is with the unknown, that small 20% portion of the brain that's like, I'm open to something new. I'm open to something different. I'm open to the unknown, right? Most of the brain is like, no, I want to know what it is. I want to put things into that like slot, into that category, into that file. It feels comfortable with the known. And even if that's not good for it, whereas the unknown could be profoundly better. And part of me doesn't want to share this because it's not really my story, but I can make it anonymous. But I was seeing someone for some months and really got to witness, and it's really painful and sad to witness somebody's programming win out. Their programming winning over their heart. And, it's not something to take lightly or to underestimate the power of programming, the power of indoctrination, the power of training your mind to believe something, whether it was through school or whether it's through your parents or their parents or their parents' parents. So culture. Culture is a huge thing. Religion is a huge thing. All of these sculpt our mind, literally take our mind, which is like Play-Doh in the beginning, and sculpts it into a certain, like, these are your belief systems. This is the paradigm, this is the matrix, this is the life that you live in, and you can only live within this context, within this frame, within this box, with these set of beliefs, with these are the things you can do, you can't do, you should do, you shouldn't do, right? All the rules that come with it. And it takes a very strong being and will, because we all have free will, we do. It takes a very strong being with free will and the capacity to think for oneself, which again, our education doesn't tell us to think for ourselves. Big Daddy government doesn't tell us to think for ourselves, right? So it's this unlearning in order to relearn or to re-remember, the way, the natural laws of existence and of being human and of nature and of the matrix and of life, right? Of existence in general. The programming can be so strong because it comes in from so many different levels, and the heart will always know the truth. The heart will always say, but this is how I want to live. This is what I feel. And sometimes we can even say, like, I trust my feelings beyond measure, but what I observed with this man is that he even said it, his head and his heart weren't together. They weren't synced. He was like, Corinne, your head and your heart are together. If your head and your heart are in two different places and your heart feels something, it feels truth. It feels the knowing. That knowing in the heart is a far stronger, more powerful vibrational and magnetic field than our mind. The mind is a tool. It is not the master. It's a servant. It is not the master. It is not who we are. Our brain is not who we are. Our consciousness doesn't even lie in our head. There's an art, there's differing arguments to where our consciousness actually resides, but I would say your soul lands behind your heart. Again, the mind is an incredible tool, but it can either be your best friend or it can be your enemy. That simply by the way you think about yourself, the way you perceive things. It's not always honest. Sometimes it's hugely influenced, most of the time, hugely influenced by your thoughts, your beliefs, or the beliefs and thoughts of others, right? We've had a great old experiment these last 6 years, most especially, of like the influence of external opinion. It's pretty scary to the degree that it can go. So I was observing, and it was really heartbreaking to see this man's heart say one thing and his mind be the prison guard of his life, of his existence, of his sense of self, and cannot break free from it. Cannot, like, knows, I don't, knows that he's in the cage, he's trapped, he's the prisoner, and does not know how to get out. I mean, for me, it was like, wow, because I think I just was born with a free thinker. And I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I just think we come in with different coding for the life that we're here to live, and the lessons that we're here to learn. And it's like, I'm sure I had a lifetime where I came in completely like, whoa, having a clue of anything. But not this lifetime. As I've shared before, I remember being in the birth canal. I remember my birth. I remember like, oh, okay, pull up your bootstraps because I know exactly what I'm coming into. So sometimes the veil is thin, and sometimes it's super thick. Sometimes the amnesia is super heavy, and sometimes it's not so much, right? So every life is different. And it's all set up and perfectly orchestrated and designed for what you are wanting to learn in this lifetime. So trust that. There's no comparing, there's no better or worse. It's just where you're at in this particular lifetime. Yeah. So don't worry, wherever you are is perfect. But this is a lifetime of awakening, of remembering. That's why we're here. And it's hugely tumultuous and confusing and fatiguing. It's really tiring, right? A lot of people are really, really exhausted. And sometimes you could say ignorance is bliss. No, well, when you don't know, when you haven't seen the light, when you haven't seen truth, oh, you just hum along as it was before. But then I think your heart isn't really that happy. Your soul isn't really that happy because you're on autopilot. And so, a spiritual awakening is confronting because it's stretching you to see with a much vaster, larger lens than you ever have before. But if you can also trust that in the like wide lens, that's coming online, like the aperture is changing, there's going to be a remembering in that because you're waking up to the truth of what has always been here. It's just that you've been looking through like a pinhole, right? And all of a sudden the aperture opens and you're like, oh, wow, I can take in so much more of the landscape now. And so trust that there will be a sense of comfort after your ego goes, oh shit, right? After the personality and the conditioning and the program goes, oh shit, what is this? I'm malfunctioning. Like the computer isn't working, the machine isn't working because it's changing the algorithm. But behind and on the other side of that, there's this like, oh, right, I remember this. I remember this. And that's why heart is the most important guide right now because it knows. It remembers. And by heart, I don't just mean a lot of people associate heart with like romance. Like, oh, my heart fell in love with him and it was, he ended up being an asshole and I can't trust my heart. No, 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 no. That's just like romantic feelings and emotions. I mean the energy center of your heart. And the more that you can sit with, be in self-awareness, be in meditation, whatever you want to call it, and you tune into your heart and the feeling and energy, not just the emotions and feelings and fantasies that might pass through it, but really the energy and frequency and vibration of your heart, you'll get to know it as its own kind of entity, dare I say. It has a character unto itself, and it's something that really deserves and demands respect and reverence because it's powerful, it's potent, and it's true. So I want to read this thread from Instagram because he just is so on point. He says it so well and so direct, and it encompasses both the challenge of truth and awareness. Yeah, so let me read it and then I'll expand on what he's saying. Okay. This is by Javier Dagba. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. One of the reasons why most people are afraid of truth is because deep down, they know that if they become aware, they will have no other choice than radically changing in ways they might not be ready for. Seeing truth without reclaiming the capacity to act on the change it demands is one of the deepest forms of suffering. It's a prison no one other than yourself can save you from. Awareness is not enough. Insight is not enough. If you're not willing to go through the stretch it takes to shift from insight to embodiment, awareness alone becomes a source of suffering. May you reclaim the capacity to act on the truths your heart already knows that you've been pretending not to see. It gives me chills. It gives me chills because it's so powerful. And, not that I want to make it personal to this man because he's not going to even watch this, but it's like those could be the words for him. I could see that his heart knew, but confronting the truth, confronting all of the limiting beliefs and the programming and the habits and the patterns and the so-called safety and comfort zone that we is an illusion. But we think, oh, I know that it's comfortable, I'm miserable, I hate my life, I hate myself, I know I'm in prison, I'm in a cage, I can't live like this, it's destroying me. But there is this, like, but the truth is so confronting because of what it takes to create the change it demands. And you can have the awareness of it. I've worked with so many clients that, they go through this phase of the light gets switched on. Awareness comes in, the witness, the observer, right? Behind, a little bit behind and above you, comes in and can witness, oh, I am not that. That's my behavior. I can make a different choice. Oh, I can see that's my programming. That's my childhood wounding. That's my belief system that I learned from my mother or from my father, or from my peers or from my teacher, or from this experience. You can start to see all the pieces of the puzzle and make sense of it. But there's this phase where awareness alone becomes suffering because you're like, shit, I see it. I see it everywhere. What do I do with it? Right? It's not yet at the place of being able to take action to change it. And what I would always say is that evolution is when we can have the awareness of when we're in a pattern, especially when we're in a trigger, and we can stop it, we can pause it for long enough to be able to make a different choice. And when we make a different choice, we go down a different path. Our behavior changes, our embodiment changes, we change. That's evolution. That's how we change and grow and evolve ourselves, basically. It's through choice because we are habitual creatures. We are super habitual. So it's really going against the grain of our habits, most of which are unconscious, right? But that phase in between where it's like, I'm aware of it, but I can't yet change it. It can feel so grueling. It can be painful. There can be a lot of suffering because you see it, but you're not quite at the next step, the next part of the phase. And you have to just trust that that's a part of it. It's like, great, you had the awareness. You didn't have that before. So you're one step closer, because nothing can be changed without awareness. If you can't see it, you don't know it, you can't change it, right? So the first step is you see it. Woof, it can be confronting. Yeah. And that's why I always say kindness and patience are two incredibly vital ingredients of this process of whatever you want to call it: personal growth, self-evolution, self-discovery, spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call it. You need to have kindness and patience along the way, and compassion, because you're going to see things and it's going to be confronting and it's going to challenge you. And it's okay. You go with the range of emotions that will come up with it. There will be sadness, there will be anger, there will be vengeance, there will be regret, there will be blame, there will be disbelief, there will be confusion, there will be a bit of everything, and it's all okay. It's all part of it. It's all part of the peeling back of the onion and unwrapping and taking ourselves out of the it's like the Russian dolls, right? One doll after the next, the next, the next. You want to get to the core part of who you are. And the closer you get to the core, the simpler it all becomes. Truth is very, very simple. It's very simple. The story of our beliefs, of our traumas, of our wounds, of our experiences, of our past, that's very complicated, right? People could talk about it in therapy for decades, not just years. They could literally talk about it for decades. And you're still on the outer edges, on the outer rims, on the, you're not really coming into the funneled core center truth that is just simple, that it gets so simple you don't even have to tell the story anymore, because you realize it's irrelevant. When you come from the story into the feeling, into the embodiment, into understanding why you had the feeling and the story and the beliefs that go within that story, and you just filter it down to the bare core of I am. I am not my story. It's made me who I am as a human being in this life. Okay, let me take the gifts. The like once you pull the thorn out of the wound stops oozing, but the scar will be there. That's okay. It's a thing of beauty. It's a thing of art. It's made you who you are today. Don't erase it, but don't let it continue to ooze and run your life. And I think, when we're looking at this piece of self-worth, and we're looking at truth, and we're looking at awareness, all of it is going to snap you out of and pull you out of your potentially monotonous routine autopilot, like you've been living your life on a certain kind of trajectory. Even if you have a really busy life, busyness could be your distraction, right? Some people don't ever stop, because if they stop, then you have to really sit and be with yourself, and you have to look at yourself, and that can be confronting. But again, remember that space, silence, stillness, being with ourselves is actually hugely comforting for the soul, because the soul says, "Oh, welcome home. Thanks for coming back. You really went off somewhere for a while. Thanks for coming back." And we reconnect with our soul and that feeling of home. It's what I said in the post that I shared at the beginning that I wrote. Home, it's you, it's source, it's love. It's this feeling that is who you truly are, and is that which is everything, right? The oneness of everything. And, sometimes people, when I used to do work around manifesting your soulmate and love, I would often get people saying, well, I don't know what love really is because I haven't had it. I haven't had it, so I don't know what it's like. And that can be really true in your human life. You might not have really had the love that you needed or wanted from your parents, or you might never have had a relationship, a partner. Maybe you just had a string of abusive relationships, and you go, I don't know love. And there's absolutely it's valid. There's a validity to that. It goes, I don't know. I don't know what a calm nervous system feels like, right? In relationship to relationship. But this is what I always say. It's the kind of devil's advocate. You have to know what something is if you know that you are missing it. You have to know what something is if you know that you are missing it. Now, your human brain, your human character might not have had the experience of love. I'm using this as an example. Totally valid, totally true. That is a truth. But your spirit, your soul, your true self, your true identity beyond this flesh and bone absolutely knows. And it knows because that's what it is. It is love. And so it knows when it's missing. So we need to expand beyond just our mind is so limiting. It can be an incredible tool. Like there can be well, it's funny. I was going to say there can be such a spark of genius. I actually don't think genius comes through the mind. Again, it's a tool. So it uses the tool of the mind to enact, initiate, and manifest. But the genius comes from the soul, from the spirit. It comes through a feeling, inspiration, and impulse, right? And then ding, it feels like, oh, that was a thought. And the thought is the genius. That's so much further down the line, the after effect of where the genius came from, where the inspiration came from. It always came through a feeling. And the feeling is an effect of an energy. And the energy is an effect of an intention. And the intention always comes from the highest source of who we are. So let's rein it back in a little bit. We are in a time where there is so much, I'm going to say it bluntly, there's so much bullshit in the world. There's so much, ego and the shadow side of all things, right? There's manipulation, there's violence, there's I mean, there's just so many terrible things, right? And there's if I'm oversimplifying it, but if I take that all and I put it into the little droplet of what I want to call bullshit, there's so much of that out there. But in that extreme, like we are in the realm of duality, and if I look at whatever is extreme, there's equally its counterpart that can have equal power and potency. And so, as I've been saying, the more bullshit there is out there, the more fakery, falseness that there is out there, the counterpart to that is authenticity, realness, truth, honesty, integrity, right? The more hate there is, the more love there is, the more dark there is, the more light there is. So we can play off of that. And it all really comes down to choice. That's why I said it, like, especially since 2020. I remember one of the first videos that I made was coming back to heart. Heart is going to be the compass and the guide, but also which path are you going to take? Are you going to choose the path of love, or are you going to choose the path of fear? And both are going to have a very different outcome. So just like within our own behavior, our life is the consequence or the byproduct of the choices that we make. And I've done an episode on the difference between fate and free will. So that's always kind of an interesting topic to dive into. And I think there's both. I think there's many ways in which we are not in control, but we are in control of how we respond to something. We are in control of the choices that we make when something is presented to us, and how we choose to respond. And the choice that we make can take us either this way or that way. I remember when I was young, they had this book where you always get to the end of the story. You always get to the end of the book. But at the end of each chapter, it was like you could, turn to page 187 or turn to page 33. And it brings you down a different route. You eventually get to the end, but it takes you down a different route. So I do think we have free will and we have choice, and certain things will come back around in cycles if there's something that our soul really, really wants to learn. And it's like, you didn't quite get it the last time. It doesn't come from judgment, but you didn't quite get it the last time, so let's bring it in again. And each time it turns the knob up of the volume, the intensity a little bit more, right? So, if I look at the personal situation that I was in, it was like, yeah, there was a choice point. And he could either really trust his heart and his soul, or he could be run by the programming. And what I saw is like the programming won out. Not to say that still can't change, but the programming won in this case, in this instance. And there might be another opportunity in another 6 months or a year or 5 years or 10 years that comes in. It's like, okay, should we try that again? For me personally, like, I learned so much through my body. When I was younger in my 20s, I got mononucleosis. I had a really bad ankle injury. I had, back injury. I had all of these things. And then when I finally was like, oh, my body's communicating with me, it's trying to tell me something. And when I began to listen to it and trust it, it didn't have to do that anymore. I didn't need to repeat that pattern of my being trying to be like, hey, Corinne, trying to get your attention over here. Come on. Like, I love you, but come on, let's wake up. Once I got it, okay. And I changed my relationship to it rather than fighting against it or being angry at it. It's like, oh, this is wisdom and this is communication. Once I began to listen, communicate, and trust it, I didn't need to go through the pain anymore. I didn't need to go through the physical pain anymore. I got the lesson, right? Relationships teach us all the time. I think they're one of the biggest spiritual teachers on this planet as a human being. And I've always, that's why I worked in the theme of relationship for 15 years, because I could see it's like, this is a huge teaching. It's a huge spiritual teacher. It is incredibly wise. It is incredibly testing and confronting. But if you use it, relationships can propel you into evolutionary growth, quantum leaps of evolutionary growth. But let me tell you, the cycle comes back round and round and round. You go through another layer and another layer and another layer and another layer. You're like, man, I thought I did that work. I thought I did that work. I thought I did that work. And for me, this last experience that I had, I could really see, oh, I've grown. My self-worth is intact. My boundaries are firm. My communication is impeccable. I'm not perfect, but I can really see the way in which, like, I didn't lose myself. I didn't overcompromise. I didn't overgive. Maybe in some ways, yes, but I saw it and I could like reel it in. I also saw how I could be where my heart would want to harden, where I'd want to become defensive. What did I do when I was becoming defensive? How did I withdraw? How did I go into a story? And it's like, okay, how do I keep my heart open? How do I keep my heart open? How do I keep my heart open? How do I remain vulnerable? And I made different choices and I perceived things differently and I showed up in different ways. It doesn't mean that I'm perfect or imperfect. It's like that. Never mind that, right? That's just the way that we're trained. I could be in the humanness, but my level of self-awareness, and it wasn't just my awareness, my level of self-awareness was really like, the light was like, yep, you got stadium lighting on here. Now you can see it. But the most empowering part of it is I made different choices. I made different choices, and that's the evolution. So the invitation is to, do you have the courage to walk down the path of self-awareness, of truth, of taking action upon that truth and that awareness, to really walk back home into your self-worth because you are deserving of being worthy, good enough, lovable, significant, you matter, you belong, you're important. Just by being you, just simply for existing, not even just as a human being, like you're a baby that came into this world and so you're deserving of all of those things, but you are an infinite soul and a spark and droplet of creator, creation, source, God, universe, multiverse, whatever you want to call it. You are that. And therefore you are innately deserving of all those beautiful things, of love itself, because that is who you are. It always comes back to that, doesn't it? I hope that's been helpful to just drop a seed. This is getting long, so I'm going to leave it at that, but it's one step at a time. It takes courage. It takes courage, and courage comes from cœur, from heart. I know it's confronting. I know it's challenging. The spiritual path isn't easy. It's not meant to be easy. It's meant to be growthful and enlightening and expanding, expansive. It's meant to stretch you. That is its job and its purpose. So it's okay to be uncomfortable in being stretched, but you will find that if you can just allow yourself to expand into it, yes, you will have the growing pains, but you will have wings on the other side of it. And one of the things that I wrote the other day is like, if you can just let it go, just let it go, whatever it is, let it go. You don't have to hold on to it. You don't need to believe the story of it anymore. You don't need to believe the belief and the identity within it. Let it go. You'll see and feel that there is a grace with a capital G that is there to carry you, to hold you, and to remind you how to fly. I'll leave it at that. As always, take it or leave it as feels right for you, and loving you from afar. Bye. Thanks for being here with me. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.